Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at the Listening Post. This week, Sri Lanka and the coverage of the conflict. The Tamil Tigers and the media up against the forces of government.
We're now 300 meters away from the Tamil Tiger line.
Welcome back. It's a familiar storyline. Government forces move against what they call the forces of terrorism and then lock the media out of the war zone for so-called security reasons. This isn't Gaza we're talking about. We'll get to that later. It's Sri Lanka. As the Sri Lankan government tightens its grip on northern strongholds long held by the Tamil Tiger rebel movement, the media are being subjected to censorship, intimidation, and news blackouts. The head of Sri Lanka's state-funded broadcaster has called on the media to, quote, restore peace and harmony, unquote. And the stakes are high. A leading editor of an opposition newspaper has been murdered, and international news channels find themselves threatened with expulsion from the island unless they play by the rules. Our starting point this week, Sri Lanka, the media, and the struggle to tell both sides of the story.
මෙතර මුලතිව් පාලමන්තලම් මුහුදු ප්‍රදේශයේ යාත්‍රා කරමින් තිබූ LTT බෝටු දෙකකට නාවික හමුදාව
Sri Lanka has been in an on and off state of civil war since 1983. However, the story is more difficult to cover now than ever.
We're now 300 meters away from the Tamil Tiger lines. I started covering Sri Lankan war in 1992. I had tremendous access. I was allowed to go into prisons and film Tamil prisoners. I interviewed the Army Chief of Staff. I was allowed to go on the Tamil Tiger side. That's changed. We're restricted.
The nightmare situation.
The media are not just restricted, they have been threatened.
For anyone who disagrees with official opinion, these are dangerous times.
International news networks, including AlJazeera, BBC, and CNN, have all been put on notice by the Sri Lankan government. The country's defense secretary warned the networks that they would be chased away if their reporting gave the Tamil rebels what he called a second breath of life. The minister issued the threat just days after this interview with the BBC.
Does that mean you think that dissent or criticism during a time of war is treason?
Yes, because I have only two groups, that is the people who wants to fight terrorism and the terrorists. Two groups. Either you are a terrorist or you are a person who's fighting the terrorists.
As George Bush said, you're either with us or against us.
Exactly.
This is how another government minister explained the policy.
I think the BBC suggested to the Secretary of Defense that he was like George Bush. Now, I may not want to be compared to George Bush, but the fact that America was attacked by terrorists and had to defend itself must be understood. And you have to take special measures for these things.
The conflict in Sri Lanka.
Those measures include making it more difficult for the international media to get accredited to report from Sri Lanka.
The country is still in a state of war.
Those that do are banned by the Sri Lankan government from traveling into the north where most of the fighting is, unless they're embedded with government troops.
We're literally a few hundred meters away from Tamil Tiger positions.
Some journalists are very brave and some people have gone up. We have taken people up and they report as they like. I mean, AlJazeera people were taken up by us. The BBC guy was taken up to Jaffna. They don't say only what the government wants. So it's not that we're trying to muscle people.
And the government is using censorship. BBC World Service Radio, which is broadcast through Sri Lankan FM stations, has had its programs interfered with in an almost comical way.
Some parts of the program where we are reporting on the Sri Lankan war, mostly, they normally lower our audio and they would play some music or something else on that. On one occasion, they also played the cricket commentary between Sri Lanka and India.
As a result, the BBC's World Service suspended its FM broadcasts. It can still be heard in Sri Lanka, but only via shortwave. The international media have been harassed. The Sri Lankan media have it much worse. As we reported last month on the Listening Post, MTV, a private TV station owned by a Tamil, was attacked, its equipment destroyed by armed gunmen. That came after the state-funded channel accused private media of irresponsible reporting. Then, Lasantha Wickramatunga, a newspaper editor, was shot dead in his car. He was the 14th journalist killed in Sri Lanka in the last 3 years.
So many have been killed and nobody has been brought to justice, which is another problem we have with the Sri Lankan government in this situation. We want them to prosecute the murderers of journalists with the same enthusiasm as they would prosecute the murderer of a politician or a military person or anybody else, and they don't do this.
As a result, journalists have been leaving Sri Lanka in droves, some fearing for their independence, others for their lives. We caught up with one of them, Sunanda Deshapriya, in the South Indian city of Chennai.
For the last 3 years that we have been at war, nearly 50 journalists have left the country. That's mainly Tamil journalists. Now government has openly said that dissent in times of war is treason. If you try to be independent and get real voices from the people, and you get threats and you get all the kind of pressures not to do that.
After a quarter century of civil war, the fighting has intensified, but the coverage has fallen off. In a way, Sri Lanka is reminiscent of the recent Israeli war on Gaza. Governments that say they're out to eradicate enemies that they call terrorists lock out the media and control the story.